Is it recording? Is it
Yeah.
anything? So Dave and Taylor, I know my class is a martial arts school. You think you're doing physical training, but I think this is very important too because it's part of my personality, part of who I am. And in traditional martial art, you take on you humble yourself and you take on the personality of what drives the guy. Okay, so let me record this again because the camera stopped. So let's just pretend I've been doing martial for 20 years. I'm 43 years old. I don't lift weights. I have shoulder surgeries and crap like that. So I'm not very athletic anymore. So my knowledge level, okay, this shows like, really lots of depth, zero depth, is very high. Okay, so maybe 20 years point of thoughtful training. But my athletic level is very low, maybe like 43-year-old level. Okay, so the intersection point is like this. So somewhere around here. Okay. Now let's just say I trained some young kid who's since he was 7 years old, like Rocco, since he was 6. By the time he's 18, that's 10 years of training, and he's very athletic. So high athleticism, high knowledge level, his intersection point is somewhere around here. Okay, so this is Rocco, and this is E. Everyone see that? Okay, and this is how you know if someone's good in that sport as an athlete or not. Okay, now there's certain sport that has no athleticism required, like chess. Right? So this is why a chess master can still play till he's 50 years old and still kick all these young kids' ass. Right? So certain sport require more on knowledge than athleticism. And other sport require more on athleticism and very little knowledge. Right? You know what I mean? So for example,
Track?
pardon?
You said track?
Track.
You say track?
Track, yeah, track, exactly. Track is there's only so many movement, and it's a very simple sport. So the knowledge level you need is not as high as, let's just say, MMA. Okay, you guys get what I'm saying? So you have to decide for yourself. You know what I mean? And this is why sometimes in the media we get so surprised that an athlete could jump from one sport to another, because they realize that this sport relies a lot on athleticism, not so much knowledge. For example, boxing. Okay. Boxing compared to MMA, the knowledge level is not as deep. So now they can't compete against other young boxers. But they're still very athletic, so they jump to another sport that requires more knowledge but less athleticism. So let's be honest. A boxer will hit faster than your typical MMA guy. Okay, much more explosive. So now they're not able to compete against a typical boxer, but they have enough athleticism to hang with your MMA guy. And so they can jump to another sport and reinvent themselves. And they might invest 2 years of their life, reinvent themselves, and then somehow get to the top. So Ronda Rousey, for example, she could no longer compete in judo because all these other young people were catching up to her. So what did she do? She jumped to MMA. Her athleticism was high enough to compete against the average MMA guy, and all she did was supplement her knowledge with boxing. You get what I'm saying? And that's what you want to look for. You want to look for these patterns, these trends. As an MMA athlete, you want to try to get seven things that will enhance your athletic ability. You know what I mean? And you can shoot a video talking about specifically what you need. And in the video we also talk about if you're super athletic, you've been doing martial arts since you were a kid. What you want to do now is find a coach that will bring out your athleticism. If you're really athletic, you do track and field, you form a linebacker, you wrestle in high school, you want to find a gym, or you want to find a coach on the side that will supplement your knowledge. And the problem is a lot of people are biased. They feel like, well, you know what? I'm really athletic. I'm going to find other really athletic guy to train with. That's fine. But then you hit a law of diminishing return, which is you're training against all the other guys who are very athletic, but you're not increasing in your knowledge, right? So how you make sure that you don't have now a law of diminishing return is that I talked about this with Emmanuel, where he said that he's kind of different from his family, right? And I said that's how Mother Nature makes sure that gene or that species survive, right? So why don't we hand the video to Emmanuel, explain to them what I mean by that.
Oh my God! So what am I? I'm like the.
I want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Sometimes I talk about stuff, and my wife, when people say, "I don't know what you're talking about," I'm like, "Okay."
All right, so I got to hang out with my family for 24 years, so I might have some knowledge on them. All right, so I'm the fifth, sixth from my mother. So we got Tiffany, Christina, Tyson, me. All right, so I'm fourth down the line from all of my mother's children or whatever. And from what I noticed from the rest of my family is they're super emotional. As in, whatever stress comes their way, they'll start yelling, screaming at each other. It's crazy, chaotic. It's ghetto. But me, I've always liked to stay alone. If I ever have a problem, I like to sit down by myself and think about it, and then try to come up with solutions that way. And you even see it now. My family tells me, it's like, Vander, you sure you weren't adopted? Or they tell me, Vander, you were adopted. We look alike, but that's about it. That sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I bring up that example of my mom. So something doesn't go her way, like her tire flattens out or whatever, and then she'll call up everybody, and then she'll start screaming, crying, anything will get. She'll cry about anything, really. But she's so stressed rather than just like realizing it's like you have a spare tire in the back of your car. Like do you know how to replace it? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you can call somebody to come help you in. And she calls me the other day. She goes, Vander, my tire's flat. I don't know what to do. Blah, 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 blah. And it took 20 minutes for me to realize that there was a donut in the back of the car. Said you could have just told me that first, and then I can come there and go take care of yourself. Versus I think the last time I was in a traffic collision or car accident, I was sliding on the ice and just going like, oh man, well this is really bad. Maybe gonna go turn for a little bit. And then my sister's in the car. She's going like, ah! And I was like, don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay, so let's come over here for a second. Some of you guys may know this. It's called the Parenti principle. It was named after an Italian mathematician. And what he came up with was that 20% of your effort is responsible for 80% of your success. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a company that hires 100 people. Okay, 80 of them are useless. And then the 20 of them does 80% of the work. So that sounds really bad, but these 80% contribute only 20% of the work. And this 20% contribute 80% of the company's bottom line. And you see that in almost everything. And for example, there's a lot of things you do in life. The effort, the amount of energy put into something, only 20% of it matters. The rest is garbage. Now the problem is that if you're really busy and really stressed out, you don't know the difference. Like everything seems important. And so sometimes I look at my gym and I realize I don't make a lot of money because 20% of my effort is in training people how to fight. They don't want to make any money. But then you look at these other gyms that are kind of sucky and they have hundreds of students because 20% of their efforts are in marketing and developing the curriculum so that is geared toward the general public and kids because the average person don't want to fight or don't want to compete. So the Parenti principle is very important, and this goes back to Mother Nature. So Mother Nature will scatter seeds, right? And then 80% of the seeds stays the same DNA, okay, or gene makeup. But then Mother Nature goes, well, I'm not sure. What if there's a change in the environment? What if there's not enough water, enough drought? What if the weather changes all of a sudden? This species or this gene will die. So Mother Nature scatters into the 20% and mutate those genes, okay? And somehow if nature or the environment changed and wiped out these 80%, these 20% are responsible for mutating and carrying on that gene, okay? So what happened is, if you're an athlete and you're training with the same group of people all the time, and you're indoctrinated with the same concept, same athletic teaching ability, that's very dangerous. Because when the environment or situation change, you'll get wiped out. What you want to do is you want to make sure you inject it. Be like Mother Nature. Have the ability to mutate and crossbreed, right? So if you're training with a bunch of super athletic guy, make sure you find like a crazy Asian guy like me to train with. You know what I mean? And he might give you insight or little change or like an event, like give him a whisper in his ear, tell him certain things he does, And boom, that's a change of plan. And what I do is I watch these young athletes. They all train together, they all gravitate together, they all party together, and then they all get the same result. What you need to do is you need to find something that's different, something off the beaten track, right? But that you can still gel with, okay? So in other words, these 20% DNA still has, if you analyze their DNA, still has the genetic makeup of the original DNA. It's just that it's a little bit mutated. Mother Nature will mutate the genes a little bit so that just in case something happens, one of these guys will carry on the legacy. You know what I mean? So let's go back to the 20-80%. If you want to be successful in life, you got to analyze, you got to apply the 80-20 rule, okay? And your goal is to constantly push for that 20, okay? Push for that 20. And what I mean is, I read one book. They said that you need to fire your client. And I'm very, like for example, like yesterday I went and I got a new job, a new client to design a website. And I was very specific of what I wanted. And I told them this is what I can do, this is how I need to be done, this is how I need to get paid. And if they didn't satisfy that, I would take on the contract. I'm very selective on the web contract that I take on now because it burned me out. And what happened is the book said that every year you got to fire the bottom 10% of clients that does not pay your bill. That pays your bill, but they freaking drain you because they're part of what? That's 80%. Okay, now Jack Welch, he's considered the best CEO, business CEO. He was the guy who was responsible for changing GE around. People hated him because every year he fired 10% of his employees from the bottom. And he infleshed it with new 10%. And people hated it because every year 10% of your coworker gets fired, right? But that's scary, you know what I mean? And your goal is to make sure you have time to find ways to get that 80 to 20, 80 20, 80 to 20. Now it's almost impossible, but you're constantly compressing it, constantly trying to find ways so that this 20% is really solid and this 80% is very loose. You know, you don't want everything you do to be around here. Now, if you're just one big blur and you don't even know what's 20, what's 80, then there's issues there. So what you need to do is to sit down in your life and figure out what's 20, what's 80. So with Evander, for example, I'm going to go back to our game plan. I'm going to see how we train, what techniques we need to work on, what techniques is producing 80% of his outcome that we're only spending 20% of time on. We're going to try to spend more time on it. You know what I mean? And what techniques that we're spending time on that's not producing any outcome, and we need to get rid of it. You know, and that is the constant management because resources and time are very limited. You know. Anyways, I talked too much. Feedback from anybody? No. Do you guys want anything new?
Boom.